Recording now. I will mute your mic for a few minutes. Please just wait a minute. ครับสวัสดีครับยินดีต้อนรับทุกท่านนะครับเข้าสู่ The Solid Pace Podcast นะครับเอพิโซดนี้ก็โอ้โหเป็นเอพิโซดที่ผมตื่นเต้นมากๆนะฮะแล้วก็เป็นเอพิโซดที่ผมรู้สึกดีใจมากๆนะฮะเพราะว่าวันนี้ผมจะได้มีโอกาสพูดคุยกับคุณคริสแมคคอร์แมกนะครับหรือที่เรารู้จักกันในชื่อว่า Macca นะครับผมคุณคริสแมคคอร์แมกนะฮะโอ้โฮผลงานในอดีตเยอะแยะมากมายฮะที่เราน่าจะจำกันได้ก็คือเขาเป็นแชมป์โลกนะครับ Ironman World Championship ที่ฮาวายนะฮะโคนาฮาวายในปี 2007 และปี 2010 นะครับแล้วก็เป็นแชมป์โลกนะฮะ ITU Short Course นะครับ ITU Standard Distance ในปี 1997 นะฮะแล้วก็ ITU Long Course ในปี 2012 นะฮะทั้งนี้ทั้งนั้นนะครับหลังจากที่เขา retire จากการเป็นนักไตรกีฬาอาชีพนะฮะเขาก็ยังทำงานนะครับในแวดวงไตรกีฬานะฮะเขาเป็น co-founder หรือผู้ร่วมก่อตั้งของ Super League Triathlon นะฮะเป็นการแข่งระยะ Super Sprint นะครับที่โอ้โหเราท่านก็รู้จักกันแล้วก็ติดตามกันสัปดาห์ล่าสุดก็เป็น London Arena Games นะฮะแล้วก็ยังทำในส่วนของ Phoenix Foundation นะครับซึ่งเขาจะมีโปรเจกต์นะฮะที่จะเกิดขึ้นในช่วงกลางปีนี้เป็น Sub 7 Sub 8 Project นะฮะแล้วก็ยังเป็น CEO ของ Mana Group นะครับก็วันนี้นะฮะผมจะสัมภาษณ์นะครับคุณคริสแมคคอร์แมกหรือคุณแมคก้านะครับทั้งหมดเป็นภาษาอังกฤษนะฮะแต่ว่าผู้ฟังชาวไทยทุกท่านไม่ต้องกังวลนะฮะผมจะแปลแล้วก็หลังจากที่คุยกับคุณคริสเนี่ยเป็นภาษาอังกฤษผมจะแปลเป็นภาษาไทยต่อท้ายไว้ให้ในทุกๆคำถามนะครับ Alright, welcome everyone to the Solid Pace podcast. This episode, wow, I'm super honored to welcome and talk with the legend. His name is Macca or Chris McCormack. Uh, I think lots of triathletes know about his work, his current project, or his past uh, career highlight. But let me remind you once again, Macca, he won Kona Ironman World Championship in 2007 and 2010. He also won ITU World Championship in standard distance back in 1997 and ITU World Long Course World Championship in 2012. That is his active life and his career highlight when he racing professionally in triathlon. But after he retired, he's still very active in triathlon community. He's the co-founder of Super League Triathlon. I think in the world of triathlon, everyone knew about Super League Triathlon. It's super excited and it's super fun. And if I have a chance, I would like to race in super sprint distance again. And in the past weekend, if you watch on Super League Triathlon channel, YouTube channel, they have like a London Arena game. Super fun, super awesome. Justus Nislak won the race, and he also the co-founder of Phoenix Foundation, which will hold. Oh my God! It's probably turn impossible event to the possible event. It's sub 7 and sub 8 project in July in Germany. So he will talk about this project in the show later, of course. And he is now the CEO of Mana Group. So please welcome Mr. Chris McCormack or Macca. I will connect with him. Please wait for a while.
How are you?
Hi,
It's
Chris. How are you?
very, very good. Thanks. Thanks for having me on the podcast. It's great to see you again. Sawadee ka.
Thank you so much. สวัสดีครับ Thank you so much for your time and thank you so much for joining the show. Uh, First of all, if the non-triathlete listen to this podcast, uh, maybe they still do not know you much. So, could you please talk about your career highlight, your professional triathlete career highlight, and your current project?
Sure. I retired. So for many people, they probably don't know me. I retired in 2013 at 40 years of age. So I was getting quite old, and I moved to Thailand, which is why I have such a great affinity with Thailand. It was my home from 2013 until recently. With COVID, I had to move back to Australia for my family, but I took up triathlon in the early 1990s. I was a runner from Australia. I always had
Okay.
aspirations of being an Olympian for running, and I was talent ID'd here in Australia to move into the sport of triathlon. And I was picked on a junior team in 1992. Triathlon was in its infancy. There was a direction now. Triathlon was about to move into the Olympic realm, and I was aboard that first wave of new talent out of Australia. They call the golden era of talent that came out of here. I won a world junior title in 1993. Um, um, I had ambitions of turning professional directly after that.
Great.
My father had other ambitions and wanted me to finish college, so I did that. I finished college in 1995 and immediately turned professional. Year of 1995, moved to Europe and finished that year ranked in the top 10 in the world. And by 1997, I was moved into world number one ranking. I won a world championship at the end of 1997 in an era where world championships used to happen every 2 years. So now they happen every year. So it was a lot more difficult back then to do that.
Okay.
And and I was moved across and started winning ITU races. Was world number one for 271 months. So one of the longest ever world number one ranked athletes. And then I always was inspired to do Ironman racing, even
Yeah.
though I had Olympic aspirations. I was brought to the sport by watching the Hawaiian Ironman as a child. I used to see it on television and thought one day I want to do this amazing race. So I opted to walk away from a short course career in 2002
Oh,
after
okay.
after racing the Commonwealth Games. I proceeded to win my first Ironman I ever raced in Australia in 2002, and went to Kona. And my career took me through Ironman racing. I was lucky enough to win 17 Ironmans in my career.
Wow.
European champion. I broke 8 hours 5 times. One Ironman Roth, Frankfurt, Australia, Placid, Hawaii twice. So I
Mm,
really enjoyed my life as a professional triathlete. It encompassed everything I did. I enjoyed being
mm,
the star of my generation to some degree. And then when that being said, I was very, very ready to retire after winning my last Kona in 2010. I was
okay.
look at unwinding, and I was able to snatch a world championship in 2012 at 39 years of age,
Wow.
the oldest world champion
Wow.
in the sports history. And after that, I was living in Thailand, which is a beautiful place in Phuket. I was part of
Thank
the
you.
Tanyapura development there, and moving to Phuket and unwinding post my athletic career. There couldn't be a better home. My children grew up in Thai, speak fluent Thai, so I definitely have
Wow.
a strong affinity with the country. Yeah.
Wow. Awesome story. So you start from being a runner and then start the short course and then move to like a long course Ironman distance. Uh, if some people read in your book when you went to Kona for the first time, they have like your tagline, "I'm here to win,"
Mm.
and we all knew that your story from the first Kona race is not quite very nice, but then you climb up, then you learn from your experience, and then you won the event. So please walk us through your journey your Kona story from first time to the world champ.
Yeah, it was, for me, it was a very difficult transition because
Yeah.
it was a, I always anticipated I was, you know, in the short course racing, I was the world number one, I was the world champion.
Mm,
I was young and naive, and I just saw Ironman racing as just a longer extension of what I was doing in short course racing. It's still swimming, biking, and running. So I was
yes.
very, very naive in that sense that I didn't appreciate or understand the major differences between the two distances. Sure, they're longer in time,
Mm,
but the
yes.
physiological differences that happen on the body. And I hadn't lost a race going into my first ever Kona. I hadn't lost a race for 3 years. So when I turned up
Mm,
in Hawaii, my first attempt, I'd done one Ironman and I won it against the world champion. Um,
okay.
there was no 70.3 distances back then, but there used to be two major 70.3 races in the world. They were considered the
Mm,
unofficial world championships. One of them was called Wildflower. The other one was called St. Croix. I'd won
okay.
Wildflower 4 years in a row, broken the record. So
Mm-hmm.
if that was, it'd be the equivalent of winning the 70.3 world championships 4 times nowadays. The days
Yeah.
just exist back then. So turning up to Kona, I thought I'd going to win this thing. You know, I
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
and so the irony of the book, my book, I'm Here to Win, came about because when I sat down in Kona and I was interviewed by the NBC for the television project,
Uh-huh.
and I was coming into this race as a newbie, as this world champion who'd done all these amazing things in short course and was now coming across to Ironman. They asked me the question how I thought I would go, and I said, "Look, I didn't come here from a holiday. I'm here to win." And that tagline stuck with me because
Mm,
unfortunately, my first year in Kona, I swam very well. I had a 13-minute lead after the bike, and I melted
wow.
on the marathon. I melted. I absolutely blew to pieces. I'd never experienced heat like that, and I failed to finish in my first ever Kona, and I got a lot of heat for that. A lot of people didn't respect that, and a lot of people were very disappointed that I didn't finish. And so I went back to the drawing board again and tried to learn more about the distance.
Mm-hmm.
I won again all the Ironmans leading into Kona, and
Okay.
I failed again in 2003. I failed to
Yes.
win. I think I finished 30th place. Walked the marathon again, first off the
Wow.
bike. I was always struggling. So my Kona story is a story of persistence because I realized that I'd been told by the Australian Federation, I've been told by the sports scientists that I could never be successful at Ironman racing. I was too
Oh,
big. They thought I should have stayed at the Olympics and won the Olympics. But I had a dream to be an Ironman champion. It was what I wanted since I was a boy. So I stayed true to that dream. And it wasn't until the third attempt in Kona that I finally got a result. I finished in fifth place with the fastest marathon of the day. And then
wow.
and then finally I finished second place the following year in 2006, and then ultimately in 2007 on my fifth attempt in Kona I won that
Yes.
championship race. It was a very it's so easy to say it now when you talk about the years, but when you're living those years, it was very,
Yes.
very difficult. There was a lot of people that were supporting me. My team was very good, but a lot of people were not. I didn't think I'd have the capacity to win this event. So the 2007 Ironman Kona event for me was a relief. It was the fulfillment of a childhood dream, but it was
Yes.
more so the end of a journey, a self-learning journey to some degree on who I was as an individual, what I was made of, and whether I was capable of turning these failures I'd had on this island at this race into positive.
Mm,
And I was able to do that, which was very, very satisfying.
wow. That is like quite a journey you had
Yeah,
at Kona, right? It's so I'm guaranteed that it's the place that you will never forget at all, right?
it's a tough day. Oh,
Yeah. All right. So next question is about the Olympics.
mm,
In your book, you always mention that your dream is to qualify and represent Australia in Olympic, and you try so hard to achieve that dream. Please share your story. How did it go, and your journey on your becoming an Olympian?
yeah. Look, I think my biggest well, it's not disappointment. One thing I learned as an athlete, when you transition from a young athlete into an elite athlete, you know, as a youngster, you still believe in the purity of sport to some degree. That the best go,
Yes.
that the best that the best end up making teams and the best go. And for me, my Olympic experience going into Sydney, in particular in 2000, I was the world number one. I was going in as
Yes.
world champion.
Yes.
I won the Australian Olympic trials, but my mother passed away in April of
Mm.
2000, and it was right prior to the Sydney Olympics, right before the selection of the Australian team. So there was a big discussion here in Australia whether I would be in the right frame of mind
I
to,
understand.
yeah, to represent, even though I'd won the selection races. So I was and so the decision was made by the national federation to not select me that year, to
Mm.
and take others. And to the credit of the others they selected, there was a time in Australia, and we'll probably talk about this later, when Australia had such depth. You know, I might have been the world number one, but the world number two was an Australian. The world number four was an Australian. So the Australian,
Mm.
there was a lot of talent for Australia to pick from. So it wasn't, you know, it wasn't as if, you know, by pushing me aside that the other athletes they could pick weren't capable of winning gold medals either. So I took it very, very personally, and it was a single reason why I opted to move across to Ironman. I was very, very disappointed in my federation's choice to not select me, and I felt that I was robbed
Mm.
of my destiny to some degree, because it was a course I'd won on in the past. I had won the trials. I was world number one, but that's just the way it happened. So for me, I was in a bad place for many years. Well, a bad place is probably the wrong word, but I took that very hard for many years. But I used that that motivation and that disappointment to really fuel a rampage of racing that took me from literally 2000, from the Olympic year, all the way to 2003, where I did not lose a triathlon. I won 32 triathlons in a row.
Oh my God.
It's the biggest winning
Wow.
streak. Yeah, biggest winning streak in the sport's history. And I raced everywhere. I won World Cups. I won Ironmans. I was on, and I think that was fueled by that disappointment. And then I became an Ironman athlete. And it wasn't until after winning 2010 in Kona, my federation reached back out to me and said, "Look, we're so disappointed at what happened in Sydney. We get it.
Mm.
You know, you've done so much now. Would you consider coming back to race in London for the Olympic Games?" And I was 38 years of age when they reached out.
Wow.
I hadn't raced. So I dropped everything and decided to take my kids on a journey to try and qualify for the London Olympics, to be the oldest triathlete to ever make the Olympics. I gave myself a lot of work to do, because most of the time athletes have 4 years between Olympics to
Mm.
accumulate points to make the Olympic Games. I'd given myself 18 months to accumulate the same amount of points. And we got there. I ended up being picked as first alternate. I didn't get to race in London, but I got to go to the Olympics as part of the Australian Olympic team, and as the first reserve for the team. And the reason I didn't get picked was I didn't have enough points to be picked. I left my race
Oh.
too late. Otherwise, I would have been an Olympian for London. But you know, the Olympic journey was a tough one during my career to swallow. And if I could have my career back again, I probably would have let go of my ego a little bit, when the
Mm.
disappointment of not being picked, and probably stayed around and raced in Athens, because my good friend and a guy that I'd raced, you know, all the Olympic champions are good friends, but Hamish Carter won the 2004 Olympics, and
Yes.
Hamish and I had raced each other since we were juniors, and you know, we were always first and second, beating each other. So it was great to see him capture that Olympic Games. But I sat
Mm.
back, and now as I'm older, and thought, you know, it would have been wonderful to be in that event and potentially pick up a medal and have, you know, have some Olympic hardware hanging in the house.
Wow, such an inspirational story. So, talking about Olympics, uh, let me ask you about your opinion about Australian triathlon Olympic team. If you look back since the first triathlon in Olympics at Sydney 2000, Michaeli Jones won silver, and then Athens, Loleta Halop won the medal, and then the gold medal at 2008 Beijing Olympic. Emma Snowsill won the medal, and then London Olympic, Erin Densham got
Yes.
the medal. But after that, Rio Olympics and Tokyo 2020, no medal for Australian triathlon Olympic team. What's really happened during the past 5 or 7 years, in your opinion?
No, honestly, I think the paralyzed, the paralyzed by analysis here to some degree. There's a lot of talent in Australia. There always is.
Yes.
What has happened in the last, probably it's, we're looking at the results of the last two Olympic cycles, but those results come around probably from the last 16 years. We lost the big series of racing in Australia. When I was a youngster, there was a lot of racing that could be done by developing athletes, a lot
Okay.
of high performance racing. I think there's a lot of confusion now with coaching in this country, where the coaches become the epicenter of a squad, as opposed to the athletes leading the charge and coaches supporting the athletes. It's sort of these
Okay.
coaches, and I think there's just too much complication. I think that's a different era.
Mm.
There's a lot of overhaul happening here in Australia, and I'm being dragged into a lot of these discussions, so it's quite an open.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's the understanding that we are well underperforming. Australian men have never won a medal, despite winning more world championships than anybody. And
Okay.
I just think the politics of sport, more so triathlon sport, and the way the Australian triathlon system is structured, is detrimental to success at Olympic Games. The Australian triathlon
Okay.
system is structured where each state in Australia has the power, and the national federation, it
Okay.
just facilitates the work of the states. So the
Mhm.
power of the national federation isn't as strong as everybody thinks. They need to decentralize that, or they need to bring that power back to the Triathlon Australia, and allow that to funnel through to the talent. And until they do that, Australia is going to continually fail. They've done that finally in cycling, they've done that in swimming here, and they really need to do
Oh.
that in triathlon. And we'll see that success, because there is talent here, but there's no denying we are the biggest failing nation on the planet. That has to fall solely on the back of the federation, and the athletes have to wear some of that responsibility as well. That, you know, to be a world champion or Olympic champion or a representative is more than posting pictures on Instagram. You
Yes.
need to do the work.
Yes.
You need to race, and you need to be committed and make those sacrifices. And there's a lot of athletes out there that like the idea of being an Olympian, like the idea of being an Olympic champion, but
Mm.
don't like all the things that come with what is necessary to do that. And that's the difference. This younger generation may be a little bit spoiled, a little bit more spoiled than the older generation, and
Mm.
they need they need to they need a little bit more pushing and opportunity to shine.
All right. How about Paris 2024? Do you think Australia will perform well in triathlon?
Look, I think in the mixed relay we have a good opportunity. There's a young guy, Matt Hauser, who's very, very strong. I think you've lost
Mm.
Ashley Gentle. She's gone up in distance now. There is some young talent that is coming. Our Commonwealth Games team this year will be very, very strong. But yeah, there is a hole. And I think where Australia is lacking, where Australia used to lead the way, we were innovative in our racing, and we had a very, very strong racing IQ. And I mean that Australian athletes were very, very clever strategic racers. The
Okay.
current crop of talent don't have any racing IQ, because they don't race. They don't race enough. So when they get into these big championship events overseas with the French and the British, they are so seasoned in their racing, and they're exposed. The Australians are very easily exposed. So I think Paris will be tough. I think Los Angeles, we should be looking at better success there, and hopefully the
Okay.
Brisbane Olympic Games 2032, we can finally see an Australian gold.
Yeah.
I'd love to be a
Yeah.
part of that journey, most certainly.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's go back to the long course.
Mm.
In your book, you always mention about the disadvantage of being like the big guy racing in Kona because it's very hot.
Yes.
But this year, actually, it's 2021 World Championship, which would be held in St. George of on the next week. What would you think the scenario of the race will happen in St. George World Championship?
I can't wait for St George. I wish I had the opportunity to race a world championship on a course like that, because the dry heat I love. There's no humidity.
Mm,
When you remove humidity from the equation, it brings a different style of athlete into the game. So suddenly, athletes like Lionel Sanders and Sam Long and some of the bigger athletes have a Christian Blumenfeld. They have a chance
yes.
of winning this event. I can't wait for the race. I think, there's a lot of people dropping out. We're trying to make sure no one gets sick with COVID still swinging around. We've lost a few athletes. I saw Laura Phillips on the women's side is a little bit at the moment. I know we've lost Lucy Charles Barclay with an injury. I think this event in St. George will be a great one. I think we're all been eager to see a World Championship happen. It's the first time the Ironman World Championships is happening outside of Kona, so that's also very, very interesting. I'm still of the opinion, no matter who wins here as that world champion, they must win in Kona to ratify that as a true world championship within their own.
Wow.
No, I mean that with respect, and whoever wins on the weekend is the world champion. But I think for the history of our sport, and they know that this is a world championship, they'll always be a world champion, but everybody wants to win in Kona. It is the one you have to win. The history of our sport sits there. The history of the great athletes that didn't win there because of the conditions, and there's a lot of them. There's Paulie Kuru and Jürgen Zach and a lot of athletes that were winning all around the world and would win an event like Utah like that, right? But they didn't win in Kona, Lothar later. So, I'm keen to see how this race unfolds in Utah. I'm keen to see the Norwegians with Gustav Iden and Christian Blumenfeld bringing such dynamic speed to the racing. I'm keen to see Sebastian Kienle's work, Sam Long's work, and I'm really, really eager to see someone like Alistair Brownlee race on this course. I think Alistair is the greatest triathlete I've ever seen with my own eyes. I think he's remarkable. He has the biggest physiology of any athlete that's ever done our sport. He hasn't been able to transition that to Ironman racing as of yet, but we've been robbed of COVID, right? This Alistair Brownlee is the athlete that retired Jan Frodeno from short course racing. Jan Frodeno was the Olympic champion. Alistair Brownlee came along and made Jan Frodeno obsolete, forced Jan Frodeno up in distance. So Alistair Brownlee, if he can nail this and win this race, would be, have to go down as probably the greatest of all time if he's to win here in St. George. I think that the lack of heat will suit him, but he's got a lot of work to do to beat this field. There's a lot of talent racing.
All right, thank you, Chris. And if you can pick 3 male, 3 female who could win or maybe on the podium, who would you pick or predict?
Okay, for the men, I'm going to pick 4 because it's too hard. I'm going to pick Gustav Iden, Christian Blumenfeld, Alistair Brownlee, and Lionel Sanders.
Wow.
I'm going to pick Alistair to win it. I hope he does. I really do. And but Gustav and Christian are going to be in the mix, and Lionel Sanders. So pick that. On the women's side, the women's field's falling apart. I would have had Laura Phillips as the overwhelming favorite. But now I'm going to go with Kat Matthews. Laura's been a little bit sick. Kat Matthews is her performance at 70.3 this year in Europe early in the year in Lanzarote was remarkable. She rode away from Annie Haug, made Annie look very, very pedestrian and delivered a big bike with the fastest run. So I pick her to do very, very strong. If she can handle the expectation of favorite, you got to deal with expectation. That's a very, very heavy bag to carry. So she has to go in as one of the favorites. I think Annie Howe can be in there, and the great Daniela Reef, who's been training in Sedona. She has not been on form for the last 2 years. She failed at the 2019 in Kona. I think this is a big statement race for her. She has to do well here. I think the only disadvantage in Daniela's arsenal is that I think the women believe she's beatable now, which is a big thing. So if I have to pick top 3, let me go Kat Matthews because I adore her and she's doing our sub-7, sub-8 challenge. I'm going to go with Daniela Reef second and Laura Phillips only because Laura's been sick. I only saw that on her Instagram profile today. She's been ill. I don't know whether that's true or not, but if that's the case, it's very, very hard to come off having a virus and then doing an Ironman in a week's time. You can be a little bit weak, but if she's fit and ready to go, she's one of my favorites.
All right, thank you so much. Let's talk about your book, autobiography book. I'm here to win a world champion advice for peak performance.
Sure.
So, if someone would like to know more about your book, what is it all about, and what reader will get after reading this book?
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's a book I wrote in 2011. I was surprised. I won Kona in 2010, and I ended up on the Wheaties box, which in America, the Wheaties box is a breakfast cereal,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes.
And I had no idea how powerful that is. Athletes like Muhammad Ali, Michael Phelps, like amazing athletes have been there. There's only 3 athletes a year that get on the box, and I was the first non-American individual to ever appear on the Wheaties box, which created big uproar in the United States of America. I'm an Australian, and a lot of the Americans were saying, "This is an American institution. You shouldn't put foreign athletes on our breakfast cereal box." And
All
because
right.
it created a lot of interest in my story, and I got a book deal, and the book ended up becoming a New York bestseller. And it's a book,
Yes.
it's not a book, it's an autobiography in some degree, but it doesn't run in chronological order of my life. So I wanted the book to be a lot of takeaway for people. Like, I wanted to tell my story, what I'd learned on the journey, and for athletes to
Mm,
be able to read it and go, well, here's what I learned, here's something you can take away, so you don't have to make the same mistakes I did. So there's a lot of stories in there. It maps my life through sport, very much focused on Ironman racing and my journey
okay.
to Ironman racing. But there's a lot of takeaway for the amateur athlete to read about my nutrition problems, how I dealt with nutrition, how I learned about how to deal with heat, my hydration issues that I had in Kona, how we dealt with them, and worked with the Australian Institute of Sport. Some of my hostile rivalries, I guess. How
Yes,
important
yes,
it is to what it means to us at the professional level to win these events. It's very crowded. There can be only one, and how that interaction with my peers and your peers can happen. Some people you get on with, some you don't. So I haven't read it for many years, but it's well worth reading. It's a good book. So it became a New York bestseller. It's something I'm very, very proud of. I'm in the process of writing another book at the moment with a writer
oh,
of mine,
wow.
but and this is a different story. It's more, the new book I'm writing is about transitioning out of sport into a new life, and what you can take from sport and transition into a post sport life.
All right, thank you, Chris. So you are the master of long course triathlon or long course distance, and we all knew that when you train or race in long course, it's not only about physical, it's about mental and
Mhm.
also about nutrition. Any best tip or giveaway you would like to give to the first time, or maybe people who are now training for his or her first Ironman?
Yes, there's a lot. I wish we had more time. I think
Yeah, yeah.
you're absolutely right. I think we as athletes, and most people look at the Ironman and see the enormity of the distance. They go,
Yes,
so immediately they think of it as a physical challenge because the
yes,
distance is so big. And I want anyone who's doing their first Ironman or considering their first Ironman to appreciate the distance, but realize that's only half the journey. The distance, anyone, I can train anybody to do the distance. It's not difficult.
okay,
You will get through the distance. What is difficult is the emotional roller coaster ride of the event. And what I mean by that
yes,
is the mental anguish and the ups and downs you're going to suffer during that event, because
yes,
it demands a lot of you physically, but it demands a lot of you as a person, mentally and spiritually. And I think that emotion is very, very intense, and
mm,
something you're going to have to deal with in real time in the event. So I always try and encourage people to embrace that. I say embrace the suck, right? Something
yes,
I used to say, which is basically
yes,
appreciate that it's going to be probably the most difficult thing you've ever done. It's not going to be smiles and fun all the time out there, but be aware that that's cool. And I always tell people, when you do a marathon or a half marathon or a 10K and you cross the finish line and you speak with your friends or your peers that did the race with you, the one thing that we all seem to go to is we always talk about the hard part in the event. Everyone says, "Oh, I was running up the hill and I felt so bad, and then this happened." So everyone seems to resonate with difficulty,
mm,
and so
yes,
that is the difficult part of the race. So I always say to people that are doing an Ironman to be prepared for that. It's going to happen, but embrace that. When that happens, that is the beauty of why we do it, and that is what brings us together. So it's going to be hard.
Okay.
Embrace that difficult part and enjoy that journey. And remember,
Mm,
you're the master of your own destiny, and nothing. I don't care how difficult it is, how uncomfortable you feel. And I've been in very, very difficult situations. I've done 30 Ironmans around the world. Um, nothing
all
feels
right.
nothing feels as good as that finish line. You will see that finish line, and it is. I still get goosebumps now when I think about when I visualize going back to some of the races I did, and that's what's so
Mm,
beautiful about our sport is that no matter whether you're first, finishing in 7 hours or 17 hours, everyone has the same emotional experience when they cross that finish line, and that is what is
mm,
the beauty of triathlons and beauty of Ironman. So to anyone doing their first, enjoy the journey. Don't be scared. Be
mm.
respectful of it. Embrace the suck. Embrace the pain, and smile for the finish camera, because that finish photo is straight up in the wall.
Yes, yes. All right. Thank you, Chris. And when we look on the duration of racing an Ironman for the first time, uh, who train for the first Ironman, they will race maybe 15, 16, or 17 hours, which in the daily life we eat 3 meal already for 17 hours. But in on rest day for 17 hours, oh, how can we eat? How can we refuel? Any tips that you would like to give?
Yeah, look, the longer you're going out there, and because nutrition is relative to the speed you're going, so the faster athletes are trying to eat more simpler sugars, simpler and
Mm,
more simpler fuels. But as you start to be out there for a longer period of time, things like protein and fats become much more important
all right.
overall journey. So you can eat a lot more complex foods. So I encourage athletes that are out there for a little longer to take maybe a little sandwich or some rice or something more complex that your
Oh,
body can
okay.
have, because the heart rate is not so high, so you can still digest it. Hydration is very, very important. But as you said, it's about ensuring that the calories are in
Mm,
to cover you for the amount of time you're out there. And a lot of people rely predominantly on gels for those calories, and that can give you a lot of stomach problems for athletes
okay.
racing for more than 10 hours. So try and eat a few more complex foods, more foods that you eat in your everyday life.
Okay.
You're looking at 15 hours and plus, bananas. A lot of my friends would have sandwiches like bread with honey and stuff that's a little bit
Okay.
complex, because your body will appreciate that, and your body will pass through the system, and you'll be able to take a little bit of protein out of it, a little bit of stuff, and keep you in the game, and you'll have the feeling of being full, feeling of not being hungry, because a lot of the times it's the hunger flat comes from the feeling and the perception of hunger, which is what a lot of amateurs suffer more than professionals in that sense.
All right. So if you race like a long hour, 15 to 17 hour, try to focus eating like the real food,
Yeah, a
not
little bit more real foods. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you're still having gels and that, but don't be frightened to have more complex foods. As your time gets 12 hours and under, that becomes a little bit more difficult, because the heart rate is a lot higher, and you're not
mm,
out there for as long. You're moving, as you rightfully said. You're burning a person doing 16 hours is burning a lot more calories. Is out
okay,
there a lot more period of time. There's a lot more body damage than an athlete doing 8. So
okay, all right. That's great. Great advice, Chris. Let's talk about your current project, the Super League Triathlon. Yes, it's happened and it started for quite a few years, and now it's very, very popular. I still remember you race F1 triathlon in like a St. George Bank, right?
yeah,
And you always talk in your social media that you miss the atmosphere or the vibe of that super sprint race, and then you invent or create this race as a super sprint. So please share with us about Super League Triathlon. How did it start and why triathletes should watch Super League Triathlon?
it's Super League Triathlon. As you said, when I retired, I was living in Thailand, so it's almost a byproduct of my time in Thailand. I was
Wow.
yeah, and I was just before the Rio Olympics in 2015, and I was reflecting on my career. I was 3 years retired, and I was still actively involved, being quite active. And I thought, geez, what was the best racing I did as an athlete? And a lot of racing I did here in Australia in that Formula One, very short races made for television. I would do the
Yes.
same in Brazil and Argentina. They had very similar races, and those style of races didn't exist anymore. And I really wanted to, as a retired athlete, I'd always talked about what I could do, what responsibility I had to give back to the sport that had given me so much. And I'd always taken from the sport. Ironman, I'd taken prize money, taken sponsors. I wanted to do something, right? So I went about creating the Super League concept, and everybody laughed at me when I said I want to do this. Everyone's like, pfft. I went to Ironman, I went to a whole bunch of people, and I said, okay, no one wants to help me, I'll do it on my own. I took a friend of mine, and we launched the first event in Hamilton Island in 2017, and it was a huge success. I think everybody laughed, and until everyone had seen it, after that, suddenly everybody jumped on board, and ITU was like, oh, everyone was picking on me and trying to take it off us. And we raised a whole bunch of money, and we moved the offices to London, and we launched our first ever series in 2017. Yeah, after that one, in September of 2017, we had a 3-race series. We brought the women in, and now there is not a young professional in the world that does not want to be part of this series. Every single young aspiring professional triathlete wants to do Super League. I just ran a camp here in Sydney with a whole bunch of Australian triathletes, and all they want to do is Super League racing because it's cool. It's short course racing. It's built for television. It's built for social media platforms. It's a great pivot for the mixed teams relay for the Olympics. It resonates with non-triathletes, and it's just, we're triathletes, so we can watch an Ironman for 8 hours, but the average person is not interested in it. Where Super League is entertainment. It's entertainment first, and it's a closed league for professionals, and it's well worth it. Check it out. It's superleaguetriathlon.com. There's all the racing there. You'll love it. There's all different formats. We mix some races are run, bike, swim. We have equalizers, eliminators. It's quite cool. Now we have a 5-race championship series, and then we launched during COVID what we call the Arena Games, which was mixed between real racing and I guess esports racing on the Zwift platform, and that has just exploded. We now have aligned with the World Triathlon body, and in Singapore next week there'll be the first ever World Championships of Esport World Championships, which will be won off the back of Super League racing. So as a product, Super League is now it sits alongside Ironman as a major triathlon property, and I'm so proud that I believed in my dream and pushed it and marched forward, and we have an amazing team of people doing it all now. And I sit back. For myself personally, I feel very, very fulfilled that I gave back to a sport, and the young generation are very, very have more opportunities than I had to use a platform like Super League Racing to shine.
All right. Could you please explain more about the difference between Arena Game and Super League Championship, Chris?
Yeah. Super League Championship is a conventional triathlon done outdoors, outside.
All right.
The Arena Games, and you can see it if you go to the website. The Arena Games is all done in an arena, in a swimming pool. So the athletes swim in a pool in a lane, and they will get onto, after they get out of the pool, they will get onto a treadmill, or they'll get onto a Zwift bike, and everything transfers to the Zwift world, to the esports world. So it's a mix of esports and real racing, and that is what it has exploded, because there has been a big push by the IOC to bring in more esports racing to the Olympics. So we were able to pivot during COVID and offer these style of racings in a COVID-free environment, and we were delivering races when the rest of the world was shut down. So because of that, I guess, advantage, we're able to establish a new product that has just been remarkable. We've had a race in Munich that was incredible. I called a race on the weekend in London. There was 10,000 people in the arena in London watching, paying tickets to watch all these athletes compete. And now in Singapore, in next week, we will have the final of the World Championships, and there will be a crown, the first ever triathlon esports world champion, crowned by the World Triathlon body, the ITU, the same people that create. Yeah, so they've partnered with us at Super League and said, man, what you're doing is amazing. And they realize, look, Super League is the future of short course racing. It's without doubt. It has massive money, massive commercial appeal. We have the biggest eyeballs of any triathlon. Has never seen so many people watch it. You know, a lot of people watch Ironman, but they tend to be triathletes. Super League is watched by people that don't do triathlon. So it's becoming the single biggest, hottest property in triathlon. So, you know, as one of the founders and owners of the property, I'm super proud, and I'm always getting involved at a board level to make sure strategically we grow, we stay flexible, and we stay true to the sport.
All right. So to make it simple, arena game is like a e-sport or indoor, but Super League Championship is like a outdoor or traditional short course triathlon. All right. So let's talk about your another project. It's like challenge the impossibility project, the sub 8 project. And when we look at the number sub 7, sub 8, wow, all the world triathlon community uh, will would like you to make it happen, because this number cannot be broken easily. All right, so could you please tell us more about story and reason you have started this project, Chris?
Absolutely. I think, you know, it's a great story. I think we're all inspired by the Elliot Kipchoge 2-hour marathon project. I think that was the first time I, you know, being a runner, I watched that and went, wow, this is remarkable. And all the steps they put in place to assist with Kipchoge's goal of breaking 2 hours, with the pacing cars, the shoes, all the technology that came. I followed that story from its inception when it was Nike, and then it went to Ineos. And I thought, why couldn't we do that in triathlon? You know, and I always have these crazy ideas. Everyone says, "Oh, Chris, you're crazy." But I think I always say being a triathlete is crazy. So we're naturally crazy by doing the sport we do. So I think, you know, I sat in an event in Bahrain, and I was with Jan Frodeno and Alistair Brownlee, Christian Blumenfeld, and Daniela Reef at a dinner. I was talking about how fast could you possibly go over the Ironman? You know, if we could nullify the rules, what is that? And so there was an argument between us all. And also at this dinner this night was Mo Farah, who is a runner, Olympic runner, and another Tour de France, the most winning ever Tour de France stage winner, a guy called Mark Cavendish. And we're talking about from a triathlon perspective. And suddenly I see Mo Farah and Mark Cavendish getting involved in this conversation about how quick he could ride a bike, and Mo Farah going, well, how fast could you run off there? So we had this big, intriguing conversation, and I thought to myself, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put this race on. So I said to Alistair and Jan and Lucy and a whole bunch were there, if I put this race on, would you do it? And they said, how are you going to put this on? I said, I'm going to put this race on. I'm going to go back. Mana Group is going alongside the Phoenix Foundation. I'm going to raise the money. I'm going to deliver a property and an event for you guys to see how fast we can go. Sub 7 for the men, sub 8 for the women. And that was sort of how it came about. And everybody were ringing around. We rang Ironman. Ironman's like, I don't want anything to do with it. This is my life story. Everybody thinks it's crazy until it happens. Now it's going to be on June 5th. You know, Alistair Brownlee and Christian Blumenfeld are both going after. They've won the last 3 Olympics. Christian is now the fastest ever over the Ironman distance. You know, a lot of people asked us why not Jan Frodeno, and Jan we just thought was going to be too old, and Jan's getting injured a lot now, so we're lucky because Jan is actually injured at the moment. So I think they're the 2 best men, and on the women's side I have Nicola Spirig, the greatest short course triathlete of all time. We had Lucy Charles Barclay, who ended up getting a stress fracture only recently, and her main training partner is Kat Matthews, who she trains over to Kat. So Kat Matthews will be trying it. So on June 5th, check out the website and you'll get a better idea, www.sub7sub8.com, and you'll see the journey of all the footage we've got of all the athletes, all their bike positions, all the teams they're bringing in to support them, all the sponsorships, all the wetsuit manufacturers creating new special suits for them to swim in. It is remarkable because what we're asking these athletes to do is to swim as fast as the Olympic gold medalists swim in the open water swim at the Olympics. Ride as fast as they do in the Tour de France, and then run a sub 2:25 marathon on the men's side and a sub 2:50 marathon on the women's side. It's remarkable. So tune in. It's going to be broadcast everywhere. It's the biggest digital footprint in triathlon history. and it's going to be a remarkable event. And I'm so proud that Mana Group and the Phoenix Foundation and Zwift, who are major partners with this, have enabled us to do that. It's going to be cool. So if you're free, come and join us in Germany. So you got to come over and watch it. I'll send you an invite. You'll love it.
All right, thank you so much. My heart will be on this project, and I wish you succeed on sub 7 for male and sub 8 for female triathlete. So, recently you have visited Thailand at Patana Sport Resort to promote about Phoenix Kids project and Phoenix Foundation. Could you please explain more? What is Phoenix Foundation and Phoenix Kids?
Sure. The Phoenix Foundation we bought. It was a concept we brought up in about 2019 about encouraging more kids to come back to sport. This was pre-COVID, and it's never been more important now post-COVID. But pre-COVID, I was talking about less kids are doing sport and participating in sport and being more active. So we wanted to create a foundation where we gave opportunities for children to do sports and broke down the barriers to entry for sport, especially a triathlon. It's expensive to do. So we raised a whole bunch of money, and we created a not-for-profit. And we realized there's a lot of interest in going down this direction, and we raised a bunch of money and we started giving it back to encouraging kids to do sport. Then COVID happened, and suddenly all these programs we had were no one could leave the house, and now we were able to deliver a whole bunch of stuff in non-COVID environments. We did a lot here in Australia. We had more than 3,000 children doing triathlons free of charge. And only recently I was able to go to Thailand, which is my heart home. My family and I call Thailand our heart home, and deliver opportunities for kids to do triathlon in Thailand and deliver activities within Thailand around the Phoenix Foundation. So check out the Phoenix Foundation. It's a not-for-profit. It's all about encouraging kids in communities around the world to give them opportunities to participate in all sports, not just triathlon. And, we do programs from donating money to kids that are going to the Olympics. We sent 50 kids to the last 2 Olympic Games. Just by funding, we sponsor some of the best athletes in the world. We run amazing projects, but at our core is kids participation, getting kids active.
All right, thank you so much. Some question from our good friend Roman. He would like to he would like to know your opinion about Craig Alexander induction into Ironman Australia Hall of Fame, because back in between 2007 to 2011, it was you and Craig who won the Kona Ironman World Championship, right? Because you won it in 2007, and then 2008, 2009, Crowley won, and then back in 2010 you won it again, and then 2011 Crowley won. So it was switching between you and Craig Alexander. So right now Crowley has been inducted to Ironman Australia Hall of Fame. What is your opinion about that?
Oh, he's a well and truly deserves it. He even though he never won the Ironman in Australia, he's one of Australia's biggest legends over the distance. He won Kona 3 times, right? I only won twice. I wish I went back. I retired from Kona in 2010. Otherwise, no, I'm joking. I think one of my biggest competitors, without question. He was my training partner for many, many years, so we knew each other well. And then we became very, very strong competitors towards the end of our careers. And we had those wonderful 5 or 6 years where we dominated the biggest race in the world together. And we would race each other all around the world. So it was that rivalry was massive. It really was a huge, massive rivalry. He deserves it. Look, he's one of the greatest to ever do Ironman racing. A fantastic runner. I think we're both already members of the Ironman Hall of Fame anyway, so it's only a natural progression that he gets an Ironman Australia Hall of Fame induction. I think he raced Ironman Australia once. I think he was 3rd, so he never won this event. But as an Australian Ironman hero, he's well and truly deserving of it.
All right. Could you please talk more about Ironman Australia, because they just announced their 35th anniversary, and it's quite a long time from the race that has been hold for 35th year. It's the second consecutive race apart from Ironman New Zealand.
Yeah.
So
Well,
walk us through your story
yeah,
in Ironman Australia.
for me growing up, Ironman Australia was huge. Like in the era of, now there's Ironmans all around the world, but only 20 years ago there was only like 10 Ironmans in the world. So to win an Ironman, when I talk about 2002, 2003, there was 12 Ironmans in the world. So Peter Reed and myself, when we won 16, 17 Ironmans, we didn't have the amount of to win. So Ironman Australia was one of the biggest events on the planet, and growing up, going up there, watching that event was the whole reason I wanted to do triathlon. So when I opted to do Ironman, I made my Ironman debut in Australia. So the first Ironman I ever did, I won and run, was Ironman Australia 2002. I ended up winning it 5 times, which is the most of anybody, and I only won it 5 times because my hero was Paulie Kiuru, who had won it 4 times, and so I wanted to equal him and surpass that. So it's a beautiful race. It used to be in a town called Foster Tuncurry, and it would move to Port Macquarie because the event got so big, and now we have Ironman Cairns and a lot of them. But it's a beautiful event. It doesn't have the I don't know, the amount of events now around the world it doesn't seem to have the momentum that it used to have in this country. It used to be, but it's still in its 35th year, one of the oldest. Them and Ironman New Zealand are the two events. I think, as a student of the sport and as somebody who really embraces the history of the sport, they're 2 races. Ironman Australia is a title you have to win. Back in my day, if you didn't have that title, it's like winning the Noosa Triathlon. You have to win it. Whether there's certain events you have to win in your career. You have to win Alcatraz. You have to win Hawaii. You have to win the Worlds if you're a professional. And I still believe Ironman Australia and Ironman New Zealand are 2 of those races, just because of the sheer history behind these events.
All right, thank you, Chris. You had been living in Thailand for quite a long time, and you call Thailand your heart home. Any message you would like to give to Thai endurance sport or Thai triathlon community?
Yeah, look, I'm just so excited. I moved to the land of smiles, beautiful Thailand, in 2013. My wife and I, and we fell in love with everything. The culture, the topography, the place, the energy. For us, it's us. We've never felt like we belonged somewhere so much. And I reflect. I remember running and riding back in 2013. There was no one on the roads. You would ride. There was 5 people riding bikes, and literally every single year it doubled in size. So I've never seen the growth in endurance sports happen as quickly as it happened in Thailand. Cycling, running, all these events just exploded. So I call out to everyone in Thailand to, enjoy this journey. Triathlon and running and endurance world is so cool. I'm so much looking forward to putting events on in Thailand and being those events and being back there now that it's opened up again, and spending a lot of time. You're going to see a lot more of me back in Thailand. My wife has been crying for 2 years. We are Australian. Leaving Thailand was the hardest thing we've ever done. We left our dog there. We still have our home there in Phuket, and we're very, very excited to go back. But to everyone doing triathlons or running in Thailand, keep doing it. You inspire a whole generation of people to follow in your footsteps, and the more we do, the more people will follow you, and we can create. There'll be so many more people doing this sport, and it's already exploding in Thailand already.
All right, thank you so much, Chris. So last question, if people would like to follow your work or maybe have a chat with you, where should they go?
Yeah, look, I always seem to be on Instagram. I don't post a lot on Instagram. I don't post enough, I've been told, but my Instagram profile is Macca, Macca now, NOW. So Macca now, like Macca is my nickname, and now is right this minute. So that's what I always think about Super League, Macca now, or that's what I think about social media. It's about the now. So follow me on Macca now. My company is Mana Sports and Entertainment Group, Mana Group. We do a whole in sports and obviously Super League and Bahrain Endurance 13. But yeah, get me on social media, man. I answer all the questions. I enjoy reaching out to the community. I enjoy talking with people. I love my life. I love this sport. And if you have any questions, feel free. We have a great training community called MX Endurance, mxendurance.com, which is a coaching platform, and we're always on there. We have about
Mm,
thousands of athletes all around the world. So jump on board and take some
okay.
of our free programs, and we can help you on your way.
All right. One question from me. Last question,
Yes.
Chris. Uh, Macca now, and everyone think that now is the right moment, but you have like a special meaning for now, right? Please explain more.
Yeah, Macca now for me now was I started a foundation years ago. After my mother passed away when she was 50, so she was very young, as I said, and I missed the Olympics for her, and I missed her immensely. It was a very difficult time in my life. And as I had children and grew up and married my wife, and I was winning all these races around the world, I reflect on winning the Ironman in Hawaii in 2007. I promised my mother I'd win that race, and I remember sitting
Mm,
back in the hotel after it. I was so happy, but one part of me felt that there was something missing. Right? I saw my daughter. I had two daughters at the time, and I'm looking at them play, and I thought, I wish my mum was here to see this. I talked about this my whole life with my mum, and I've
mm,
finally done it. And I felt like I was robbed because of she was taken with breast cancer. So my wife
mm,
and I decided to create a foundation. And when I say create a foundation, we decided to raise money to have my girls, my daughters, understand or at least hear who my mother was. So I decided to raise. My mother lived on this earth for 19,455 days. Uh,
mm,
and I did 140.6 miles in an Ironman. So
mm.
my wife and I decided we would raise $2,735,374, which is
Okay.
the amount of days my mother was alive multiplied by 140.6. So for every day
Mm,
my mother was alive, I decided I'd try and raise $140.6. And I raced my entire career until I did that. So from 2008 to 2012, we ultimately achieved that goal, donating $3 million to charity, for breast cancer charities, in the name of my mother. And that's
mm,
what Macca Now came about, because the Macca Now Foundation was born. And the
mm,
now was for not only women, because breast cancer might be a disease that was suffered by women, but
mm,
as a mother who had three sons, myself, my older brother, my younger brother, we lost out on so much by breast cancer. So yes, it's a disease that women face, but men, and myself, and sons and husbands
mm.
also. I that's where Macca Now came from. Not only women, and no opportunity wasted is the other sort of. I always sort of those two things. So that's where the now came from. So it resonated a lot for me, because it makes me think of my mother, that I did something great
Mm.
with her name, and I also tell my kids that it's now stands for no opportunity wasted. Push on. No matter what an opportunity is, go after it and chase it.
All right. Wow. Inspiring story. So, Chris, thank you so much for your time today. And I will follow your work, whether it's Super League Triathlon or Sub 7, Sub 8 project. And I hope you succeed on that both project. Thank
Thank
you so much for your time today.
you.
ขอบคุณครับ สวัสดีครับ All right. All right. Okay. I just stopped